So, hello and good afternoon, and welcome. It is a pleasure to participate in today's art festival. I'm Antonia Folguera, and I'm a curator at Sonar Plus D, which is Sonar Festival's Creative Technologies Conference, which happens in Barcelona. It's great to be today here in The Hague. Today's art, along with Sonar Festival and other 6 European festivals, are part of a network called We Are Europe, which is a network of festivals who collaborate together in putting part of the program, like concerts, installations, or talks like this one, this conversation that we are going to have right now. At We Are Europe, at the program, we want to reflect how, let's say, today's ideas are building tomorrow's culture. So what we try is to bring the ideas that we think interesting and look forward. So this panel that we are going to experience right now, it's called Our Technological Future. And I think that in this 3-word sentence, the stress should be put in the 3-word letter 1, our. And not so much on the technological and the future, because if you've been at Koert's talk, he's talked a lot about human nature and human evolution. And Douglas has a book which is called Team Human. But yes, we want to talk about the algorithms, the artificial intelligence, and all these technologies that fascinate us, that fascinate me, that I'm sure you are fascinated about, or otherwise you wouldn't be here, but also fascinate the 3 participants of the talk today. So I will tell you more about them, even though they don't need much presentations, but I would like to welcome them on stage and receive them, please, with a very warm hands together. Koert, Douglas, and Andrey, please come in. So, hello, good afternoon. I wasn't planning to present the thing myself alone and make you come on stage. So now I'm a bit confused, but let's go on. So, let me present you the participants of the panel. I have here Koert van Mensvoort.
Hello.
Have I pronounced it correctly?
Absolutely.
Possibly you have seen him before. He is an artist, a designer, a philosopher, and many, many other things. And the thing that I've liked the most, an amateur. And I think that here, maybe many of us are amateurs too. Paraphrasing his own description, he's the founder also of Next Nature, which is a 21st century nature organization that wants to go forward with nature, not back. Then we have Douglas Rushkoff. He's a media theorist, author, documentarian, and professor. He has been named one of the 10 most influential intellectuals and has more than a handful of successful books. And his job is to explain in different forms, written, in film, in books, how technology shapes society and how we have a relationship with it. And last but not last, we have Andrey Sebrant. He studied physics and quantum physics, something very fancy that most of us don't understand and makes our mind boggle. And he has been working in technology since the 90s. He's the director of Strategic Marketing at Yandex, which is a public Russian technology company with works, of course, with super cutting-edge AI. So, let's start with the talk, and let's start maybe with, we'll start with a 5-minute presentation of each of them, and then we will have a conversation that we will open up to you. So have your questions ready, listen with your ears open wide, because if we are in this together, it's going to be more fun, and we are going to learn more from them, especially. So I'm going to give the word to Koert. Tell us a bit about you and Next Nature.
Okay, I'm presenting first, yes. I just did this presentation of 1 hour already. Are there people in the room who were at that presentation? That's quite a lot.
Oh, sorry.
You can start from the beginning now.
There's 5 minutes I want to take from that presentation, which is important for this debate, because this debate is about the future of our relationship with technology. And I think right now we are already in a situation that we cannot imagine a future for humanity without looking at the future of technology. And the reason for this is that basically we are co-evolving with technology. It's not separate anymore, even though we might like to. It's just like the bees and the flowers. They co-evolved as well. The bees take the nectar from the flowers and they also spread their pollen so that the flowers can propagate. And we create all this technology so that technology can propagate, but we also co-evolve with it. So is this a symbiotic relationship, or will it parasite on us? To understand this, I like to look at the evolution of evolution. And for the ones who were at the talk here, I just repeat this short part where I take the arrow of time, start at the beginning, put time against complexity, and then you see our world evolving, starting with the Big Bang and elementary particles, atoms evolve. After that, molecules emerged everywhere in the universe. On Earth, something very special happened, because on Earth we have something called life. And so far, it's the only spot in the universe where we know that we have life, and this is typically described as that we have cells that evolved on Earth. It took billions of years. We always think things go fast, but in evolution things can go really, really slow. But in the end, things happen. Cells evolved, life started there because they can replicate. From cells, it took 1 billion years, and then one cell was encapsulated into another cell. And I think this encapsulation is an important term, because you see that in evolution, different stages, well, when they stabilize, they can encapsulate in a new stage. This also happened with cells, that complex cells emerged with all kind of smaller cells inside. This could have been the world and the end of it, but evolution always goes on. So it's a wonder that besides cells, also multicellular organisms evolved. Sponges, mushrooms, plants, dinosaurs, butterflies, lions, and also human beings. And now it's tempting for us as human beings, especially with all the stories that we already know about our presence on Earth, especially religious stories, it's tempting to think that we are the end point of evolution. That this all happened, but life builds upon other life, right? So are we the end point of evolution? I think it would be very naive to think or even desire that we as human beings are the end point of evolution. It's tempting, but yeah, you know, evolution goes on. So something will happen after this emerging of humans. We're also not the summit of evolution. It's not a hierarchy. We're not at the summit. We're not even the dominant species. Maybe already, because my body consists of billions of cells, and they have their own presence in the world. A question you might ask, of course, is, if you see this graph and humans at top, then things will go on. We're not at the top in the end. What's next, right? What will happen? And then we talk about robots, and they will move into our world, and they will basically replace humans. This is a bit of a Hollywood scenario, which I think is also very, very naive. I think we should more look at these dynamics in evolution and look at how evolution goes on, how life always builds upon earlier stages of life. So chemistry builds on physics, biology builds on chemistry, our cognition stems from biology, Does calculation build on cognition? We don't know. We don't know what is going to happen. But if I look at this model and this perspective, then I think it's quite obvious that some kind of superstructure is emerging at this moment. Maybe it's already there. Maybe it will take 1,000 years. I don't know exactly, but at a certain point, a superstructure will be emerging in which we will also be encapsulated. And basically, this is a big step because evolution here takes a leap from genetic evolution based on DNA and cells into, you could say, memetic evolution. We all know the meme from Dawkins. The meme as an information unit. So will there be this superstructure which is based on memetic evolution that in the end encapsulates human beings? I think towards the future there are only two options. One option is that humanity just goes extinct. This happens, right? It's something that might happen. It happened to the dinosaurs. Some meteor could hit the Earth, or we do something really stupid with the nuclear warfare, and that would then be the end of humanity. It would be a sad thing to me, because I think humans, well, they are, of course I'm biased because I'm one of them, but I think humans are the most spectacular and beautiful phenomenon that we've seen in evolution so far. I just love it, what we can do. We have such a interesting position that I will get into later. But we also have to be aware that, not only as a human being and as a person, there might be an end to your life, but there could also be an end to humanity as a species. It might happen, but I don't want that to happen. I want us to thrive. I want us to go on. But then the other scenario is, I think, that if we don't go extinct, then we will be encapsulated at a certain moment by this superstructure that might be evolving. And this is also quite scary to many. So, and I want to be an optimist, but I also realize it might be very scary. And I think our agenda for the future is now like let's not go extinct, let's try not to do that stupid stuff. But if we are encapsulated in a larger superstructure, then what should that superstructure look like? What will the path be? And I realize this may sound utterly abstract, because the guy is talking about memetic organisms and superorganisms and superstructures. What can we do with it? But then if we look today, I could ask the question, can we spot this superorganism already? For me, it's quite easy. You could look at countries. You know, a country you could already see as a superstructure that encapsulates human beings. You are a citizen, you have a passport, you have certain rights. Country takes care of you, but you also have certain obligations. There are laws. You cannot do anything. Ask not what you can do for your. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. It's like. It's in a way similar already to the cells in my body that are part of my body. I'm the superstructure within this for these cells. And the cells, they want to live themselves, but they are also embedded in a larger structure. We are embedded in countries. Another example would be corporations. Corporations are very dominant on our planet now. If we look at corporations as superorganisms, they might be the dominant organism on the planet. It's not humans anymore, it's corporations. They have a lot of activities. They give us jobs, that's good. They feed us. You know, if all corporations would be removed with some magic stick now, well, where would you get your food? They take care of our health, they provide health care, they provide entertainment. Thank you for being here and not watching Netflix at this moment. So corporations, they're also a dominant superstructure or maybe even superorganism on the planet. Maybe religion is another one. I'm not getting into that now. That's maybe a step too far. And of course, this is also now in this time put in this, I think, acceleration because of digital technology. What you see here is a map of the internet. Every computer connected to the internet plotted as a dot, and then all the lines between them plotted as lines, and you see this structure that, to me, almost feels natural. But we never really designed this. It was not a decision to create this. This is an emerging structure that grew around us, and now it's so present in our lives. Just think for yourself, if we turn off the internet for 1 week, would you still have a job? How do you communicate with your loved ones? We are embedded in this superstructure. Is this the superorganism that is evolving? Well, I don't know. I don't know, but it might be that we are now in a stage similar to the moment when on Earth there were not yet cells, but there were molecules, and these molecules were making all kinds of configurations before the cell emerged. I think something similar is happening now in another stage with superorganisms emerging. We are embedded in it. Maybe they can take care of us. Maybe we can have a symbiotic relation with them. Let's make them, and let's try to push them in a direction that they don't parasite on us, because this is also something that might happen. In the end, this is transforming the Earth. It's not just the biosphere anymore. There is a technosphere evolving. Could this technosphere be the superorganism? I leave you with more questions than answers, but at least these are interesting times to live in and also meaningful times to make personal decisions. Thank you.
That is true. Yes, 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 go on. Don't be shy. And how about Andrey?
Would you please help me with
Yes.
switching?
Yes.
After this presentation, it's a little bit tough for me to start telling you good things because I'm on the dark side. I belong to one of the corporations. Nonetheless, let me try to show you that these corporations are not as dark as they might be. And actually, I really love this picture because I found it many years ago in a really old textbook on English language. And it's, especially at this event, just a perfect background and absolutely meaningful words. Yes, we are so scared by machine learning, which is sometimes more often than I would like called artificial intelligence. We actually don't know well what natural intelligence is, and then start talking about artificial one. Okay, so let me try to explain what I think exciting and not frightening in all the progress of machine learning. Okay, artificial intelligence. One of the really great persons in the machine learning area, Jan LeCun, who is now AI director at Facebook, once, again, several years ago, when asked what is machine learning in 8 words, gave a perfect definition. The definition that machines that learn to represent the world. And representing the world is really very good wording. Representation, it's not about understanding. And I, as a physicist by training, do know, and I can even refer to a famous physicist, Richard Feynman, who is a Nobel Prize winner and who liked to repeat that no living physicist understands quantum physics. It's just impossible. And that's true. I have PhD in quantum radiophysics, and I can absolutely agree with Feynman. I cannot understand, nor any one of my friends could ever understand quantum physics. And of course, you know that quantum computing is very close to us. And we still hope that machines will explain somehow how they make decisions, how they operate in creative tasks. But that's virtually impossible. And I believe that we should not request all the algorithms to be interpretable. For a simple reason, we, for a long time, have lots of things that actually we don't understand. Medicine is perhaps even better example than quantum physics, because aspirin, we take aspirins in amounts of 100 billion pills a year or something, and actually it was first synthesized in 19th century. But the mechanism of how aspirin works were understood around 1995. So for a century, we were taking pills, saving lives, not actually understanding why they do it, how they do it. I don't know a person who ever refused to take a life-saving drug because there is no detailed explanation how it works. Why do we request all these explanations from algorithms? And actually, Arthur Clarke, wonderful writer, I think actually a wonderful thinker, once formulated 3 laws, and the law number 3 is that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I believe that at least those 3 shown here are good examples. Autonomous vehicles, devices, not necessarily cars. There will be lots of devices which move and decide something on their own. Then all these devices that can hear and then can speak to us. And obviously the same story about machine vision, where these devices can see the world, and sometimes they can see it in much more details and in much more senses than we have, because we have only, say, limited spectrum of light available for us through our eyes. But for a technology, it's not a problem to see in infrared or in gamma rays and look at the universe like our telescopes look. So we are going to live in a smart technical environment. It's really an environment, it will be everything around us that is sentient in a sense, because these devices, this environment as a whole will see, listen, respond to us, comprehend what is happening, and finally act on its own in the places when we allow it to act. That's an important point. And that means that for me, team human is really important. I work for all my life in human teams, except that for the last 5, 8 years, I work in the hybrid teams, where not only these nice colleagues and their pets are around, but also neural networks, strange robots, devices, sensors, whatever else. And this is the world when they are partners for us, not just tools, because the moment you start thinking of someone or something as a mere tool, you are inefficient. Just imagine yourself being thought of as a tool. Actually, if you work for a company, the company may perceive you as a tool for making money, but believe me, you are very inefficient if you know that you are just a tool for your company. If you feel that you are a partner in doing something great, your productivity, your motivation is so much greater. So don't consider anything smart as a tool. It's not productive. But the second point, that's why I say that we shouldn't be scared. It's just a smart environment and smart partners, which is very difficult to come across if you look for humans only. But we are special. We really are special in the terms that we have our bodies. And this is no less important than our minds. Our prefrontal cortex, the thing in our brain that makes us humans, actually, it's not the only important part of us. So this means that until we know how to somehow reproduce, somehow represent this unintelligent part of us, we cannot ever think about artificial persons. Because artificial intelligence is not artificial personality, and we act as persons. There are actually very, very few decisions in our lives, very few moves in our lives when we act purely intellectually. And the moment when we act as a person, we stop being just pure intellects. And we have no idea. We haven't even started to invent these unintelligent parts of us into machines, into something around us. So that's it. I think that the mere fact that you here mostly are in real living bodies and not just images from the cloud makes this meeting, these emotions, possible only among us, among humans. But they can be augmented by all the machine learning.
Thank you very much. Douglas, it's your turn.
Gosh. A lot of what you said reminds me of the way I would speak about the internet in the late 80s and early 90s to people who were afraid. And I would say, look, atoms became molecules, molecules became cells, cells became organisms, organisms became humans, and then humans, thanks to the internet, which will serve as this superstructure, right, and allow humans to network together into this one thing. And it's like Desjardins or something, this kind of beautiful vision of evolution and progress. And what I came to realize over time was this was a well-meaning, white, Western, male, Eurocentric recreation of something that indigenous people had for thousands of years. Yeah. Right? It's what James Cameron was kind of getting at with Avatar, which was about, look at this civilization that we think is so advanced, is finally getting to the place where they can almost inhabit the world that this indigenous, native planetary species had been doing all along. And my problem with using evolution is a cool idea, and I'm not saying I'm an intelligent design person, even though evolution can't explain the speciation of the Cambrian age. If you use information theory, there's just way too much to be explained by random mutation, but that's another story. That there's this moment when we tell this evolutionary story of this word we use, emergence, which is kind of the Richard Dawkins hand wave for not believing in God or soul or something else. So all this stuff, and then there's an emergent property and the next thing happens. An emergent property and the next thing happens. This emergence moment when your system somehow gets so complex that it can no longer be explained by these rules and is now up there. And sometimes I wonder, though, whether a human consciousness is an emergent property of matter, or is consciousness the precursor to matter and biology? And when we go back to big bangs and all that, we don't really know. And the reason why I get kind of essentialist about this is I'm trying to understand the world a bit more cyclically than in terms of progress. I love the invention of progress and the axial age. Progress was invented once we had text, once we could write things down. We had history we could remember, and we had contracts into the future, and we started to think of ourselves in some ways beautifully as progress. That's why the Israelites wrote down the laws and invented social justice. We can make next year better than this year, and this year better than last year. But progress also has some tricky, fatalist, imperialist, colonialist, messianic, ends justifies the means like qualities to it. The other thing I think it's really important for us to do is to distinguish between technology and digital technology. Right? The digital technological environment is different than an industrial one or a bronze one or something else. Digital is very particular. So I can't just look at it like the wheel and the record player and digital, because digital is a symbol system. Digital, whenever you're doing something digitally, you're going from the real into the symbolic and then feeding it back into the real. So if it's a symbol system, then it's something else. So when I look at the internet, I say, oh, great, look at the internet. Look at this imitation of the way that we're all connected anyway. Right, so I think we're already connected. I think we already know each other's thoughts. I think we're already in a unimind. I think that's already there, only for various reasons of the lack of complexity in our understanding of the world. Right? We think of ourselves as individuals, and then we're going to build this internet so we can experience what it would be like to be connected, which we actually are. The trick with it, for me, the danger in using it as more than a hint of how things are, is who actually controls and operates this digital sphere. You know, the non-player characters that we encounter in the video game of the internet don't have our best interests at heart. You know, when I think about, I know algorithms could be used for good. They could be used for ceramics and painting and music and to play. But the algorithms that are out there now, when I think about the people I know who are writing them and making them, the idea is to teach an algorithm how to find the exploits in human psychology in order to dive into those exploits and get someone to do things that are against their own best interests. And that's like the definition of a demon, right? You're going to create this thing that uses your psychological weaknesses to get you to do stuff that's against your own best interests, which is what they're designed, for the most part, to do. Right? When I was a computer hacker, we looked for exploits in systems. That's what we called it, an exploit, to get, to break into a computer system. Now computers are looking for exploits in people. And that's where most of the money is going. So figuring out how do we create this superstructured environment where human beings can finally be manipulated the way we've wanted to all along. Where I believe that human beings, which I value as much as all of us, and I do believe can be augmented by technology. I love human augmentation of humans by digital technology, but I want us to leverage the home field advantage that we have in the real world. And I don't think we have the home field advantage on the symbolic landscape of corporate-owned digital technology. I don't think it's magic. I think these technologies right now are very, very, very simple. If anything, so simple that that's part of their problem, is we look at them, we're mistaking complicated for complex. They're really complicated, but they're not quite complex. That we don't see the kind of complexity that you see in a single square or cubic centimeter of soil has more complexity than all the computers, on the planet right now. So my concern is not that we're making too much technology and all that, but just that we remember that progress is not a straight line, that progress is more of a spiral. And what we can do at each stage of technological development is consider really long and hard what aspects of humanity do we want to retrieve now that we can and embed in this technological future, rather than sort of leaving it behind and moving on to whatever that next phase is.
Okay, so Thank you. One thing that I find curious is in the last years, let's say with the rise of the popularity of artificial intelligence, we didn't talk a lot about artificial intelligence 10 years ago. It was there already. Is that we have started to talk less about the technology and more about the human nature, as you have done, as the three of you have done a minute ago, and yesterday Memo Acton did. In a way, it seems that we have come to think how we got there and what we can do. It looks a little bit as if we are in a point where everything can go right and everything can be really fantastic for everybody, or things can go very wrong. I don't know if it's just my imagination, but listening to all of you, I have the sensation that we are at some point at a crucial point where everything can go right or wrong, and we need to do something. What we need to do. Do you know?
Well, yes. Well, first of all, about this point where we are at, because I very much agree that we are at this crossroad, and are these systems or the artificial intelligence, is it parasiting on our humanity? Somehow we all sense that something is going on there. Is it just capitalism? How do we define it? How do we go? How can we find the other path? That's the big question. Then again, I also think that as humanity, we have been at crossroads many times. And I really think it's a miracle that we got this far. Because let's not forget that we as humans, we used to be somewhere in the middle of the food chain, not an important species on Earth. There were much more powerful other species, and we were really scared of lions, and not anymore. Now they are in the zoo. Something happened, and this relates to, I think, our inventiveness, that we somehow we have this imagination, and we are able to materialize it in the physical world, and that's what technology does. And that brought us here. And now we are a bit like, I sense like teenagers as a humanity. We are in this weird situation which we cannot really cope with. And yeah, we know we cannot go back. That's also not desirable. We have to go forward and we have to mature. So I think the question we should ask ourselves, how can we mature as a humanity? Mm-hmm. And I very much agree also, we should go as a team. Because any technology that is only for the happy few, to me is a dead end. In the end, it will not be indistinguishable from magic. It will not be successful if it's only for the happy few. Truly successful technologies are available for all of humanity.
That should be. Your book is called Team Humanity, and that sets us a bit apart from the machines and the algorithms. Yeah, what should we do as a team?
I mean, the linearity of your argument aside, I often think of ourselves as, okay, we're at that preteen moment as a civilization. And if you think about the child growing up, first they experience themselves as one with the mother, then they develop ego and individuality, and then by around 12, 13, 14, they start thinking, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe I want to have sex with one of these other humans, right? They rediscover intimacy and connection. So we're in that 12, 13, 14-year-old ego, myself, America and money and dominance and corporatism and, the Renaissance even. We're still in the end of the Renaissance with the Vitruvian Man and, all that. But the ones who the Zuckerbergs and Bezos and Musk, they're not turning to the others yet. Right? They're looking at how do we get off the planet, right? How do I build a sex robot? They're looking for, ways to use digital technology to enhance the isolation and individuality. So and it's funny, I don't look at it as that likely anymore, but if we're going to survive as a civilization, it's going to mean turning back to one another. In other words, really, yearning for that, valuing our connection with other people more than our ability to insulate ourselves from other people.
I'd love to hear Andrei's thoughts, because you were laughing a little bit. What do you think?
Actually, I cannot agree with you that digital technology is that much different from a traditional one. Because if you start to read about what people were afraid, what people were thinking when cars hit the road 100 years ago, there were very similar fears that first, we all will go insane simply because the speed is too fast. No human being can survive in a vehicle moving 50 miles an hour. It's psychologically impossible.
Right. They were wrong about the specifics, but they were right about automotive travel, right? That we're leading wars, and we've got climate change and carbon output. So they were right.
And actually, cars kill over 1 million people a year. Yeah. 1.3 or something like that. On the roads every single year, it's worse than any war actually in the late years. Nonetheless, I believe that we, as humankind, as species, managed to adapt because we changed our legal system because there were no, traffic rules, there were no traffic signs before there were cars. So we invented something to keep these cars at bay.
Yeah, except in America, we redesigned the landscape around the needs of the automotive companies. So GM, they take the CEO of GM, who becomes the Secretary of Defense in the US, and says
do you
that,
really regret it?
What?
Do you regret it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I regret dismantling the streetcar. I regret that a worker used to be able to leave work and then go on a streetcar with his newspaper and drink a beer and go home. Then he was convinced that rather than sitting and drinking a beer on the streetcar, he should leave the factory after operating heavy machinery for a whole day and now get in another piece of heavy machinery that he has to pay for by working 1 extra day per week and pollute the world in order to drive himself home in his own car. So no, I think, we lobbied Congress, we dismantled the streetcar, and we created an urban environment now where you need a car to get to work because there is no public transport. So no, I would have rather a more balanced approach to transportation.
Actually, I came up with this point about cars not because they are a good example of modern technology, but for quite a different reason. I know that I'm now in a very ecologically aware country, but still, among the audience, are there people who own cars? Oh, at least some. Then I have a question. Yeah. Do you give names to your cars? You know, that's what makes us human, because, you actually own a killer machine. And these machines kill, as we already mentioned, more than 1 million people a year. Still, we try to build trust, surprisingly, between us and machines by simply giving it, it's very human, giving it a name. And what I was telling in these 5 minutes of my presentation was, when I mentioned magic, it's approximately about this relation between us and machines. The moment when you start working with a machine as a partner, the moment when your algorithm is your colleague and not your tool and not your enemy, then the life is getting better for you. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, if it's your algorithm, sure. Most of the algorithms I interact with are not mine. They
but I
belong
think
to
for
other
this
people.
reason, it's important that it are our algorithms. And maybe we can also talk about the difference between the situation in the US and what Europe could do.
And you still not even started mentioning China.
That's a different situation, of course, more central.
But
does anybody use
many algorithms?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And does anybody use TikTok here? I mean, that's Chinese army, right? You know that, right? Yeah. And you still use it. What the heck, right?
No, but this what the heck is also, that also is part of being human.
Yeah.
And while we were discussing cars, I think it's fascinating that, of course, LA is a city is completely constructed for the car, and it's not a good quality of life.
Yeah.
And it's also in Europe, we look at it like, and then we have Venice. And in Venice, if you've been in Venice, there are no cars there. And it's so wonderful to walk there and you realize what's happening, there are no cars. But the only reason that there are no cars in Venice is because they have all the stairs. They just couldn't drive there in the infrastructure. So it never was a conscious decision. It was previous infrastructure that determined that there are no cars in Venice. Right. And now we love it for a good quality of life.
Oh, come on, they have boats which completely work for cars there.
Right.
So,
and the Dutch in the Netherlands, they bike everywhere. So this, for us who are not from the Netherlands, we are also fascinated about that you bike to every place. We only
the bike is well. This is the Steve Jobs thing that
this can be also a killer machine. I don't know.
And the computer. Well, Steve Jobs called the computer the bicycle for the mind, and maybe that was naive, but it's fascinating that if you look at how animals move efficiently, that the condor is way more efficient than a walking human being, but a person on a bike is the most efficient transportation in terms of energy.
Yeah, just one more thing. The one aspect of digital technology we haven't addressed yet as a group is that, unlike previous technologies, digital, genomics, robotics, and nano, they self-evolve, right? They adapt over time. I can tell an algorithm, figure out how to get her money, and it's going to keep trying different things, which is different than just a tool, or it's different than a tool that just does whatever you told it to do.
Yeah, that's exactly why I suggest not to call these modern technology mere tools, because they are more sentient than our tools are.
Here the difference is that in the Industrial Revolution, our muscle power was outsourced, and now we live in a time where our cognition is being outsourced in the world.
Right, but
it gives some friction, yes.
But if we tell them, here, my little algorithm, go off, figure out how to take their money, figure out how to take their data, figure out how to get them to use their smartphone more hours a day, I don't care how you do it, just go, my child, then it's not really our partner anymore in those kinds of cases.
But sorry, you said if we tell the algorithm, maybe problem is with we, with us, not with the algorithm. Because I think that since the very early stages of humankind, from the beginning of, Bronze Age, when, this stick with a stone, all that was used not only to build something or to produce food. They were killing each other with all these sticks. And then, extremely ethical thing, religion was used to start very bloody wars. So I think that in all these spheres that this technology let us do really bad things. The problem is with us, not with the technology.
Right, so likewise, give a little 3-year-old a gun, and they might do things that they're not. Are we ready to be launching algorithms? When it's Bezos and Zuckerberg and the Google boys and Peter Thiel and the Chinese army who seem to control most of these technologies right now, do we trust that and maybe they wake up in the morning thinking, what can we do with algorithms to benefit humanity, and how can I be absolutely certain that the algorithm I'm unleashing will have positive long-term effects? I'm so excited to see them have that conversation, but I don't hear that. I see them talking to Sequoia Capital about how are we going to return 1,000 times investment within the next 18 months. And that's usually not by doing the most pro-human, pro-social algorithmic activity.
We have 5 minutes, and I would like to take a couple of questions from the audience. Right? Does somebody have a question? Yes, over there. And over there, okay.
I wanted to bring up also the bike again, because the bike, I think, is a very good example of choosing for a different kind of technology. So not cars for transportation, but bikes, which are much more human-centered and also better for the environment, etc. So, and in the Netherlands, this was actually a very conscious choice. So it started, I think, in the 70s with activists who were saying hey, wait a second, we actually don't want these cars everywhere. We want to have the ability to still use bikes everywhere. And then they started to put bike lanes in the city of Amsterdam, and that really changed a lot. So I think it's interesting to consider.
But actually, I think that before we came in Holland better than in other parts to this conscious transportation, our conscious decisions about transportation, there were times where transportation was evolving fast without these limitations. And maybe it's important to have different stages. The stages when something has just grow up, and then when it's grown up, it should be somehow restricted.
Other question.
Hi. I have a question for Douglas. You were saying about big corporations, they have their leaders and they make the decisions. But I think those corporations don't have people having the lead. It's just the corporation itself has its own will. So my suggestion would be that the government puts on heavy regulations on corporations for algorithms and AI and all that kind of stuff. So we people can vote for the government to have good regulations, and they put it on the big organizations that we don't have any control over anymore. What do you think?
I mean, I'm from America, where government is almost a dirty word at this point. It's really scary. I mean, yes, I love the idea. Right now, the best I've seen government do for the internet is I have to click on something when I go to a site that's going to take all my data. It's like, you want the website or not? Click here, we're going to fuck you in the ass, but we'll let you. And if I don't, so it's like, it's just this other stage of, okay, fuck me, okay. But yeah, I think government would be a terrific way, particularly to deal with these large, super organismic non-player characters. It's really hard as individuals. The other side is when, and I find it positive, when the programmers in the companies get up, when they really want to know what we're making, and we say, wait a minute, I don't want to make that. And when Google employees walk out because they're like, screw this, we're not. That's another high leverage point. But yeah, what I'm all about is looking for where's the space for human intervention in the feedback cycle. So it's not just machines designing for machines. And yeah, governments definitely, and regulation is one of them. As long as we get people at the table other than the big companies and the politicians they're paying for. With smaller companies, municipalities, citizens groups, psychologists, educators.
Last question.
I wanted to go back to the beginning, to the topic of evolution. I wanted to ask you about the role of psychedelics and plants in that kind of evolution. And the second part of the question would be if machines or algorithms would also need some kind of psychedelics to evolve.
There was someone at Media Lab who was working on how to get robots to trip, how to get computers to trip, which is interesting. Yeah, I mean, human psychedelic coevolution should be the model for human technological coevolution.
Yeah, I think it's a really good suggestion.
Yeah.
and why? Because it's basically, with some psychedelics, I guess they open the ego to the mind. So you think in this tunnel, and you have all your thinking over there, and then at a certain moment you kind of are, some do it natural, but others need some drugs. You open up, and I think it's just very interesting for algorithms also to kind of shake them up. And they might be more refined because of it. Because the issue we're discussing also is that if CEOs of large corporations are in charge of what happened, that's just too limited as a perspective. And if we can create more diversity and shake it up, I think that's good for everyone.
I'm going to make my whole talk tonight about that. That's psychedelic.
And actually, if you look at some algorithmic art, machine-generated art, you may come to the idea that they do know something about psychedelics already.
Okay, so I think time's up, right? I don't know where's Carol? Yeah, time's up. Yes, so if time's up, it's time to say goodbye. And first, thank you to Douglas, to Andrey, and to Koert. And of course, thanks to all of you for listening and participating. Thank you.
And thank you, Antonia,
Namaste.
for moderating.